Welcome back to Desert Island Slabs, the hobby podcast where I invite some of my favourite collectors on to take us on a journey through their collection. I give them a task. They choose the 8 items in their collection that they would save above any other, that they would take to a theoretical desert island. My guest this month is Laura Siddall, an avid collector, also known as Pop Culture Encapsulated, who focuses, as probably is apparent, on pop culture related items, but she collects so many more things than that, with a focus upon the most visually appealing, visually beautiful items that I have seen pretty much anywhere in the hobby. So, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. And how are you doing today?
Yeah, wow. First of all, what a welcome, James. Honestly, great to be here.
Yeah, and well, as I came to, we were discussing before we went hit record in terms of, because obviously you're predominantly, there are many other items which we'll talk about, especially with one or two items, but you're predominantly a pop culture collector. So in terms of the algorithm, the algorithm didn't give me you straight away when I joined the hobby. So it was when I stumbled upon your account, I was just met with this just blast of just this incredibly well produced, just passionate pop culture items, and it's amazing to have you on to discuss through some of these items.
Yeah, and I massively appreciate the fact that you've even noticed my account, James, in this kind of sea of wonderful collectibles that we have on Instagram. So yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. And I think you've just touched on it, but that's one of the beauties of my account is the ability to connect with so many different types of collectors. Whether it be sport, whether it be that of the more pop culture, movies, music. It's really nice for me to be able to see so many different types of collectors.
Yeah, exactly. And when you were asked to come, and obviously aside from being incredibly honoured to be invited to Desert Island Slabs, how did you go about sort of coming to your choices? What was it, that what was running through Laura's mind when she was formulating her choices?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, it was quite an easy one for me because I went straight to those items that, I'd had to work a little bit hard to get from, the most perspective. So the majority of them were ones that I'd really spent a lot of time trying to get hold of, which we'll, go into a bit more detail about. But we're going to begin with one that really kicked off my collecting journey. And yeah, that was one that I really more or less just stumbled across.
Yeah. So yeah, well, shall we start? So
Shall we
take
kick it
take me through
off?
your take me through your first item.
Okay, so this is where it all began for me. This is a Kobe rookie card from 1996, and I started my collecting, in the last few years since obviously the passing of Kobe. So I was going through this whole stack of old cards, dating right back to the 80s. And when I found the Kobe card, it really just stopped me in my tracks for a moment. I was like, hang on a minute. This actually means something to me, given, what we've, experienced from, such a tragic loss of somebody so impactful and talented. So it really did stop me in my steps. And then I started to look a little bit deeper into the collection. And yeah, that really did just spark the interest for me.
And was that a lot that you bought then, or was a lot that you bought and the card happened to be in there, or
Yeah,
how
it
how
just
did you
happened.
kind
It
of?
was a lot that I bought. Somebody was doing a clear out, and yeah, I had a little bit of time, so I thought, what, this will be fun. Let's see what we can find out. In all honesty, I was looking for majority Michael Jordan pieces, so I hadn't really, thought too far ahead about, what else I might be interested in. But when I found the Kobe one, it just really, really, struck me, and yeah, got me interested in seeing a little bit more.
Yeah, and so this was quite early on in your hobby journey. Then this was a real sort of seminal
Absolutely.
moment for you.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been a bit of a collector. Anyone that sees my Instagram, I've got everything from a collectible Vespa scooter all the way through to cards, magazines, and I've even got a golden ticket over here from Willy Wonka. So yeah, I've always been a bit of a collector. I've even got Nintendos dating back to the 80s. So I've always kind of appreciated things that have got some sort of nostalgia meaning. But this is when I started to really start to think about, trading cards, magazines, and really delve into the hobby in a bit more detail.
And how, because I guess in terms of, they always say that collecting, it's a gene, being a collector in terms of, and what was it about, how did you actually come into the hobby formally, for want of a better term? What was it about the cards, or how was it brought to your attention, Laura? What?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely just stumbled across that lot that somebody was, selling. I hadn't really had any intention to go, kind of jumping into the hobby. So it more or less stumbled into that. But then for me, I just got really excited to, find what I found within that. And then I started to, delve into things like podcasts like yourselves. Obviously, there's many other creators out there. We've got Instagram, we've got eBay. And the more I started to delve into it, the more excited that I got. And I thought, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. So I want to explore it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess it's kind of a similar type story to me in some ways, because it was almost like a fluke that I just found some cards in a Question of Sport board game that happened to have a Mike Tyson one in, that I just did some research on. I'm not a Mike Tyson collector by any means, and then it ended up. And then my first thought was, does David Beckham have a rookie card or rookie sticker? And then that was it.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was
It
literally it.
sparked the interest.
It set
Yeah.
everything off. And then my life was never really the same after. It was just that one. Well, if Mike Tyson has one, David Beckham must have one. Who's my favourite player of all time, along with Bobby Moore. And then that was it. I was away, and then it was all just what happened. And you evolve as a collector, and in the sense what we'll talk about a bit, in terms of you get inspired by other
Absolutely.
collectors to put your own spin on it. And in terms of the card itself, it's an upper deck card, is it? From a
Yeah, it's an upper deck from 1996, and this one's been graded by MGC. And again, that was my first grading experience as
Oh
well.
wow.
So, yeah, so it's a bit of a double whammy for me there. And obviously, use the guys over at MGC, with it being a local company. I think that was something that, I was keen to explore before I started, looking too far ahead. So, yeah, just a really meaningful card there for me. I think it's a little bit more than just the card, though. I know we've touched on it before, James. One of the other things as I started to delve into this a bit deeper was I started to feel really relaxed. And I started to look forward to the post. When I usually, when my doorbell rings, I'm usually like, oh no, not again, having to drag myself out of my chair to go and get the post. But I started to look forward to getting my post and what I purchased. And I started to feel like, the hobby's got such a powerful impact on my well-being. And I think, it's something, as I've connected across Instagrams with some of the incredible guys that I've got a privilege of connecting with, the amount of stories and times I've had discussions with people about what collecting means to them, as it makes it mean even more for me.
No, exactly. And really, the predominant theme of the intention of this podcast is to be a forum for people to share what collecting means to them. Really, that's what this whole podcast is about, because everyone is a collector that I'm inviting on, but everyone obviously has their own unique experience as well. And
Absolutely.
it's so it, and like you touched upon, in terms of, yeah, it's relaxing, but it can serve more of a purpose than just being relaxing as well. It can actually be really therapeutic and cathartic as well.
Absolutely. I've even had, people term it as a coping mechanism for when they're going through tough times. And, a couple of people that have gone through, challenging circumstances, which we all face, whether it be divorce, jobs, no matter what it is, health. I've had quite a few people share all of their experiences. And then that makes me think, I'm not just sharing a card here, or, alternatively, when I'm sharing something of somebody else's, or even, just looking at somebody's post on Instagram, I've just got that heightened awareness that, this means something to people.
No, exactly. And it's sort of, it's so true. And honestly, like it almost sounds a bit conceited, but the rush that I get when I've like inspired someone to do something with
Yeah,
the content it matches anything at work, if I'm being completely honest. It's like it's
totally.
such a rush to, just be like that. So many people that I would call friends now have, like, I've either
Absolutely.
reached out to them or they've reached out to me, especially since I started doing the YouTube, be like, I really like that video, that made me feel something. And then, you then learn their stories and things. And
And
um
that's what it's all about. And I think, it's quite important, nobody just, whacks things necessarily on Instagram. We're all thinking about what we're posting, how we're posting it, how we're doing it, and that's a lot of thought. And I think, one of the things that I've learned with my collecting journey, particularly from an Instagram perspective, I think the stats are about 70% of stuff tends to go unseen, right?
really,
70%. And that means stuff to people, they're
yeah,
posting things they care about. So, my page, it's really important to me, to pay attention. And that's the thing that I love the most about Instagram is, looking at what people are sharing, and then, it sparks my interest. And as you said, you get inspired by other collectors. And I think it's really powerful.
yeah, no, exactly. It's so true. It's so true. And yeah, I love Instagram in terms of that, and I love your Instagram as well, because
Bless you.
so much effort goes into it in terms of the overall, like, there's like, it's like a common theme, isn't it? That word we use, brand, almost. It's like, it's
Yeah,
just, you can tell it's a pop culture encapsulated post without having to know it's on the pop culture encapsulated account. And I don't think, honestly, like, I do not think there is one other account that I could think is as recognizable in terms of, like, this has come from Laura and Laura's done this post, because the shorts are incredible. The way you get them,
oh,
like,
that means a lot, James.
popping in and sliding in and stuff, and then you've got like a bit. They look amazing. I mean,
Bless
honestly,
you.
like if you don't follow Laura on Pop Culture Encapsulated, then you absolutely just have to go and just follow her and just scroll through, because the reels, the short, they're just amazing. Oh, that's, yeah, love it.
I really appreciate that. I've got to admit, James, it's a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. I get super excited when I'm sitting here, making those posts and things like that. So, getting feedback like that does mean a lot for me. And, just putting it out there to guys as well, you know, saying those things means so much to people on Instagram. And given, sometimes things do go unseen, let people know if you see something you enjoy, because it does mean a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, in terms of, I used to be quite bad at liking things, and in terms of, if you like it, you're like, oh, that's cool, but then you don't necessarily. But sometimes just a comment actually really helps. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And, going back to well-being, I've shared a few things on my page. I try and do that, as much as I possibly can, and particularly when I see something that, is really cool or means something to somebody. And the amount of messages that I've had that, oh, that means so much that you shared that for me. And it's like, no, thank you for the content, because, I enjoyed it, but also, I'm hoping that other people can enjoy it too.
yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, and I think that goes well into the next item, because this is probably something which so you collect, obviously, cards as well, but and I don't know the composition of what you own compared to, in terms of percentages, but when I think of you, I think of, like, magazines. Really, that's
Sure.
that's that's what I think of when I think of you. I think of the
Yeah.
wonderful Instagram account with the shorts and the reels, but then I think about your magazine collection, which is just,
Yeah, and that's one of my greatest loves is doing the magazines. And again, this was stumbling across stuff, delving into the hobby. And when I saw that, people could grade magazines, I got super excited, because then, it opened the world of what I could potentially collect, right up for me. And yeah, unsurprisingly, anybody that's seen my page will know, massive Marilyn Monroe fan. And it's not necessarily for the reasons that you might think. Yes, she's incredibly beautiful. Yes, she's an absolute icon. And I know we've touched on it, James, but there's not necessarily the best known fact about her is that her IQ was higher than Albert Einstein. That just blows my
Yeah.
mind that I didn't know that.
She's a very interesting character. I think she's a fascinating character, Marilyn Monroe. Um, and I didn't know too much about her, but as I said to you, I I actually read her biography recently when you said you're doing a Marilyn Monroe item, and I was like, oh, I wanted to I wanted to learn more about Marilyn Monroe anyway. So then it was a perfect opportunity to read it, and I was fascinated by her life. And those people that they like. So we're actually going to speak about another one, I guess, as well with the patch card we're talking about later. But there are some people that just transcend and are almost so obscenely famous and so obscenely well known that I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like for them as people to exist.
Absolutely. And we think, how much, the world, and particularly that industry's evolved over the last 70 years. We know the challenges that people face in those industries now. I can only imagine, what it was she was navigating.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and she had many issues, which probably she had a very difficult upbringing. For one, she had you know the, the substance abuse issues as well, and you're just in a pressure cooker as well because if you're like you're it was very interesting with Marilyn Monroe that the overlap the biography I read was by someone called Charles Casillo,
Right.
and it's weird because she was sort of simultaneously like revered and obviously lusted after, but then also because she had quite a storied dating history, she was also castigated as like very promiscuous as well. And it's a very
Sure.
interesting like um just just coexistence, I
It's
think, because it's
really,
like
really complex. Really complex.
she's being, for want of a better term, slut shamed, but also really being objectified sexually. It's really interesting, I think, with Marilyn Monroe. And to go back on the item as well, this is a very what is the it's a photo play. What
Yeah,
is it
so
about
it's
this one?
a Photoplay magazine. I think the thing for me is, it's a really iconic image of her. And yeah, I collect the magazines. Not all of these particular magazines are gradable, different sizes, things like that, play a bit of a part there. But the piece about this was when I stumbled across it, first of all, it's the age. This is over 70 years old. This was made in 1952. So the
Yeah,
bit for me that this really sparks is it was in such good condition. And that really struck me that, somebody's really taken care of this magazine for over 70 years. And that, it really just kind of catch my breath a little bit. I think that's a little bit wow. And again, speaks to the hobby because it's something that we see almost every day in, how people treasure their items, they take care of their items. And, that's really representative for this over such a broad period of time. And that's what started my journey then with CGC and grading via CGC. And then my mind was blown again when this came through grading to get an 8. And I've graded a lot of magazines. I've graded well over 100 magazines. And, there are some modern magazines that don't get an 8, you know?
yeah.
So it blows my mind to think this is over 70 years old. It's been so well looked after. And, I just think it's such a beautiful image that it's capturing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image. And how did you, because obviously it's in such good condition. So how did you acquire it? I guess that they must have. That it's not randomly in that condition, is it? Was someone must were they like a magazine collector
Yeah,
already?
they're
The
a
person who bought
magazine
it off.
collector. Yeah. So again, just sourcing it and, paying attention to what I was buying and, just trying to get the best quality I could. But I guess from my point of view, it's more about the item. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best quality. I just really fell in love with the overall image. The fact that it's in such good condition just blew my mind even further. But I would have probably loved it just as much, if it
Yeah.
had, graded a 5, because given the age, a 5 is still pretty good.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And was this also like we spoke with the Kobe? That was a very early
Mm,
card for you in the hobby. Was this an
yeah.
early magazine for you in the hobby, or was it
Yeah,
a
so
bit
that was
further
one of
on?
the first magazines. So I got really into the vintage magazines first, and then I started to kind of look at the crossover with the sports card aspect. So I've gone down a few different routes, but I've got to admit, one of my kind of primary loves is these old vintage magazines. And, again, it just taps into, moments in history that I think are really cool to capture and make really nice displays.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what what was it? How did you always like magazines then, or what? How when did you sort of see them as, oh, these are actually almost like a portrait or something that I can
Yeah.
actually display? What?
So I
How
would
did
say I've
you?
always had like quite an interest in art and paintings and things like that. And I was actually looking for a painting for my lounge. And then, when I started stumbling across these, I thought, hang on a minute, I can change it up, I can make this more diverse, I can, tap into different areas of interest rather than, putting all my eggs in one basket into one image that's going to sit there. And then, so I started to kind of think more from an aesthetic perspective, and yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah. And if there's a person that you're interested, so in terms of how you approach this element of your collecting, if there's like a person that you're interested in, will you always go for like, oh, I want a magazine, a really nice magazine of that person, or how do you go about
Yeah, I
thinking what to
guess,
collect?
yeah, from a older magazine perspective, yeah, absolutely that. It's about the individual and, looking at what images really strike me and the availability and things like that. So definitely from an older magazine. From a newer magazine perspective, it's completely different because that opens up a whole new realm in terms of the grades that you're able to achieve, right? So that comes
Yeah,
back down to, what's available, what am I able to get from a newsstand perspective? Because that's probably where I'm going to get the highest and most,
yeah,
gradable items essentially. So that's more about, what's trending, what's popular, what's coming through at that time. So it's a bit of two really.
yeah. No, yeah. As I said to you, and actually a mail day I filmed and it's coming out I think next Wednesday. In terms of what we said in terms of as collectors, it's actually quite rare for me to be, not because I'm this super strong independent man, but it's quite rare for me to get influenced to literally collect that thing that someone's posted up like,
Sure.
oh, I want that and because that's great. No, actually though, but the themes of
Yes.
collection I've been inspired by so many times. And as I was saying to you off air, just to, like, you inspired me because My Chemical Romance are my favorite band of all time. But then I was like, I'm not like a. But then what I used to love, Kerrang magazine, um, which is a British magazine. So then and I was like, you know what? I used to love Kerrang and MCR are my favorite band of all time. So why don't I collect all My Chemical Romance Kerrang covers? And without being
So
exposed to
cool.
your account, I wouldn't even. It's almost weird. It's almost weird that I didn't think of it, but I literally would not have thought of it because that in a CGC frame that will look better than
So cool.
any like any portrait or painting, or just as good as any portrait or painting. It's just
Absolutely. And
incredible.
like you say, it's a theme, isn't it? You're able to kind of go down these different routes, but essentially, the collecting gene is still the same gene at the end of the day. You're just kind of tapping into it in a slightly different way. And I think you're going down the magazine route, it does open up the diversity of what we
Yeah,
can collect, but there's still that synergy with what we're familiar with because it's not that
yeah.
far removed from that of the cards.
No, exactly. And you can also get, because obviously we grade cards, you can grade magazines and comic books, and
Comics, yeah.
there are some crossover probably in terms of the skills required to identify condition. But you said magazines tend to be very, very, very temperamental with
They're
their
very
grading.
fragile, very fragile. And that probably leads us quite nicely into the next item, James, which is
That's what I
my
was going for.
9.9. I'm feeling
Yeah,
it. But yeah, you raise a really important point. I think there is or could be potentially an assumption that because something's new, it's easier to get a higher grade. And what I found is actually a bit different to that, just in terms of the fragility of magazines. Even a finger dent in a magazine. You talked about potentially having a dinged corner.
Mm.
They're so fragile, and I think the modern way of posting these items really does impact it. So you commonly see magazines now posted in either a poly bag, or they're commonly posted in like paper bags. And I have many magazine subscriptions, and rarely from those magazine subscriptions do I get one in absolutely mint condition, which again links us into the MGC. So I've got to
Yeah.
give the guys at MGC a massive, massive shout out, because not only have they been, a phenomenal support to my hobby, but it really links in, things like getting a 9.9. I do not believe that would have been achievable for my Lionel Messi, which is the first edition of the MGC magazine, if it hadn't have been for the diligence that they'd taken in terms of the way that they were posting it. And again, we're familiar with all the products that we use for cards, and it's quite easy to find products to send comics off to be graded in. But magazines are all different sizes; they're all different shapes,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Exactly.
really, really difficult to have one common item. You can get top loaders, you can get bags, you can get all sorts of different products. But there isn't the consistency that we have with cards, which again can make it a little bit more challenging to grade the magazines. But going back to the point about MGC, the quality of the packaging, there's no expense spared there. I buy these boxes, special magazine boxes. They're like wrap boxes, and I would highly recommend, if anybody wants to grade a magazine, don't scrimp, definitely go for the correct products. But there's no expense spared there, because that's what MGC do with their magazine as standard. And that just really reinforces for me that the guys are primarily collectors. They get it. They're not just thinking profit and,
No.
banging them out in poly or, paper bags.
Exactly. And I think with MGC, I've never graded with them. But you can tell the passion that they have, when I've watched interviews with them and things, and you can tell that they are collectors as well. And I think it's difficult for companies that come in to any industry. I think anyone's always going to be met when they come in with almost like, I can't even think of the word, because I had a word in my mind. It's almost like people are afraid of something new coming in and challenging something. So therefore, the automatic thing is to like disregard them or be like, oh no. But actually, MGC, I think, really do care about what they're doing.
Absolutely. When I got that grade, the guys got in touch with me straight away, and I felt that excitement from them. They were genuinely just as excited as I was to have that magazine in such a high grade. And, that for me, particularly in this area of collecting, it's connections as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just the items, but the connections matter. And yeah, I really value that. And I've had such an incredible experience with them. I did a couple of cards at the beginning with MGC, and then got on the hype of PSA. And there's no doubt that, they offer some fantastic services. But I've got these guys on my doorstep, and they're doing some fantastic things. And yeah, I'm excited to see them grow and want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and with regards to the actual magazine itself, it's the first. It was the first MGC magazine, which I saw a lot. They really put a lot of effort into it, and their social media was really sort of like
Absolutely.
good about this whole thing. And then, is the highest grade you've ever received for a magazine? I
Yeah,
presume.
absolutely. It's the highest grade that I've ever had. I've just got the grade through for the second issue, and I was lucky enough to get a Ronaldo out of 50. The Messi 9.9 is out of 10. And I got a 9.8 on that again. So there's a bit of a theme there, and I think that does link back to the
Yeah.
diligence in the way that they're posting that one.
And also, it's sort of in terms of, yeah, obviously it's amazing the way they've posted it, and because if they destroy it before it gets to you, but it must be incredibly gratifying as well to see how much you've learned about something that you care about, and then be able
Oh,
to apply it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, that for me, it was one of those, like one of those important moments in my kind of collecting journey when
Mm.
I thought, I feel like I've learned something here. I feel like I can do a really good job with these magazines, and it's something that I can apply. But I've got to admit, if anybody sees me in a newsstand, whether it be a supermarket, wherever, WH Smith's, I go to extreme lengths. It's like running a magazine gauntlet when I go in there. There's been many occasions when I've gone to buy a magazine and it's not scanned, and I'm doing the self checkout, and the helpful assistant comes over and whips it out of my hand, and I'm like, no, there's a finger dent, I can't use that,
Oh no.
put it back. So it's really amusing. Every time I go and pick up some magazines, the shop assistants that are manning the tills are, they're like, oh, you're paying a lot of attention here, we can have some good conversations.
Yes, it must be interesting if you go, we'll see you,
I'm like
WH Smith.
literally like,
You're going in like, yeah, just like, who is this absolute?
honestly, I go in with the box ready, so I'm like literally minimum kind of contact, touch points, things like I'm really, really detail driven on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something you're passionate about, and you do want to preserve it as well as you possibly can. Um, yeah,
But that is a tip. I've got to just give people a bit of a tip there. If anybody wants to kind of get into it themselves, minimal touch points. Try and get your magazine straight into a box where you can, and minimize. Open it, turning pages. You're going to get creases in the spine of the magazine. Every single touch point you have is an opportunity to damage it. So they are really quite fragile. So if it's grade you're going for, be mindful of that.
yeah, and because they are by their very nature, they're quite like a card, like say on chromium card or something. Yeah, you can get some fingerprints and smudge marks. But it's quite hard to indent it properly. But on like magazines, that like quite thin paper,
So
it's quite
easy.
easy
It's so
to.
easy. And that adds to the beauty for me. So when I get the high grade, I'm like, that's representative of the journey I've gone on with that
Yeah,
particular magazine, but also then the value, because they are so hard, to preserve in that state, even just posting them in, for a submission. I had one magazine last week, and it's got a complete bend in the top edge of a Lewis Hamilton magazine. I got one that was, 9 something, and then I got one that was 8.5, posted exactly the same way, but one got damaged en route. So,
mm,
it just adds again to that value of the 9 point whatever that is.
yeah, is that do you sort of do you buy graded magazines, or you just you're you
Yeah,
are
I enjoy
identifying?
the process. Yeah,
Yeah,
I enjoy the process. So I'm grading them myself, and I'm on that entire experience, and it's really enjoyable as well. So, shout out to CGC. I've got a fantastic contact over there, a guy called Adam. He's absolutely fantastic. So again, the office in London, they've been absolutely phenomenal. I've gone down there, I've collected stuff, I've dropped stuff off, and I just really enjoy being on that experience with those guys as well.
yeah, and it really shows as well how much you love it. With the, as I've said, to go back on your Instagram again, it's just it shows as well how,
Oh,
because
thank
it's
you.
it's almost like you create an experience when you're like when you are posting something in ways that I enjoy many different accounts, and whether that's your background as well, you mentioned earlier, in terms of
Yes, I spent a
yeah.
little bit of time in marketing. I don't have any formal qualifications. I've kind of, learned on the job, but had, some great opportunities with working with some really, really cool people that have shared a few of their tips with me. So I try and add a little bit of that expertise in. But I've got to say, it's not all about money. It's not all about value for me. It's about the enjoyment of it, and
Yeah.
yeah, everything I do. I think, if you're loving what you do, you can't go wrong, right? You can't lose if you're enjoying that. And every piece of content, every magazine, it's that experience for me. And if other people can, get a little bit of enjoyment out of watching those reel, that means the absolute world to me.
Yeah. And in terms of, because it's interesting, do other people, as in within your life, for instance, because other people like myself as a collector, I obviously love it, but I'm quite sensitized to it. But collecting as well, I don't know, with my life, it's bit odd when people hear what I don't volunteer it, but it's like they don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't understand what. And what's that experience like for you? Well, for instance, you mentioned about
Yeah.
WH Smith. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess initially my friends were just like they're used to me, coming up with these weird and wonderful items. She's got a scooter here, she's got this there, so they're kind of used to what I'm like, should we say? And at first they were a little bit, not necessarily cottoning on to what I was doing, but I've got to say they've been fantastic because once they've, delved into what I'm doing, they're like, hang on a minute, look at this, and then giving a few other friends a bit of a nudge and said, you need to look at what Laura's doing, and even things then, it's created conversations for us. So, I'm an 80s kid. My friends are a little bit older than me, and she started to share with me the concerts that she went to in like the late 80s, early 90s. And she started telling me about all these concerts. And then I started looking at tour programs. And, there's a whole host of tour programs that you can also grade. They fall into that magazine category. So it's created that kind of common interest for us. So that inspired me to then start looking at the Madonna Blonde Ambition tour. So I've got a fantastic graded tour guide of that. But again, that's then opened me up to other people in the
Yeah.
industry. And I've met an absolute, I mean, this collection is on another level. My friend over at Blame It on Madonna, um, she could open a museum. Her collection is that incredible. And again, that just goes back to the essence of, it might just be a magazine here, but actually when you start sharing that with other people, it starts to, create some really, fun, interesting discussions.
Yeah, and I think that's a core theme of the conversations that we have on this podcast. And in terms of, I would much rather see like Madonna. I don't know much about, but
Sure.
I would much rather see like someone passionate about something
Yeah.
that I know nothing about, rather than someone who's a bit half-heartedly doing like something I'm obsessed with. I would much rather
Yeah.
see the passionate person, because
And
it's
again,
amazing.
you look at the post and it blows my mind, particularly with that account, how much time and effort. When you delve into it, you start to understand this is a fashion designer in the background and it's showing through in the
Mm,
level of attention that's being paid. But this is just what, anybody who's passionate, puts all of that effort and energy into, their composition.
it's just.
It's really cool.
It is cool. Well, that's why we're doing. That's why we're having this chat, isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah,
talking about these things, which from my experience, I think in terms of like some of my friends and family, well, my family all get it actually, but in terms of friends, they don't get it. But then some of them actually, when I started the YouTube, they watched the David Beckham one. And actually, like now I like understand it. I
yeah,
understand this now a lot
yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah.
Like why you're doing this, and it makes so much more sense because it's not just cards and stickers and tickets. It's actually like how it all interplays with its effect on you and the stories of these athletes and these amazing iconic people, um, which is nice to
And it's
do. And
inspiring, isn't it? And,
yeah,
it's a conversation starter. As you said, there's so many iconic individuals that, whether or not, it doesn't matter what job you're doing, there's something you can maybe take from their experience. And it's all just conversation starters. But I think as well, having things like, The King of Collectibles on Netflix, I've had some friends,
yeah,
they kind of, they've seen what I've, but not necessarily really understood it. And the amount of people that have messaged me saying, you need to watch this program, which has been really fun because then now they're understanding it. And I had a friend the other day, she messaged me and said, I know what a box break is now, which I just absolutely cracked me up. But
yeah.
it's something now we can talk about and have that kind of common understanding.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing as well, in terms of one of the things I like to do when I'm thinking about what I acquire and what I want to target is, for instance, so I do love like, no, I about to say I do love them. I actually don't. I quite like them is better. I quite like things like low numbered parallels and things like this. But a test
Sure.
I like to do in my mind when I think about items that I like to acquire, in addition to whether I like them or not, is actually could I show one of my friends this, and would they be like, this is
Yeah,
really objectively cool? That means
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
like, it's like, this is actually like someone that knows nothing about the hobby, like, oh, low numbered out of 10, incredible grade. It doesn't really mean anything to them, but sometimes you could go and show, I don't know, I don't even want to say, but you could go and show someone that I could show my best friend who's My Chemical Romance obsessive
Yeah,
like me. I could show him that CGC graded MCR, and he'd be like, "That's really cool,"
get it.
you
Yeah,
know. That's really cool, and that to me is part of it as well. And whereas it's great to have that objectively cool thing, which is that. And actually, moving on to the next item, which
yeah.
is something which I guess one could say actually may not be understood necessarily by people outside the hobby, but this is a set which is very popular, and also an insert which also gets a lot of popularity because of just simply really how great it looks in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my Renaissance cards, and I went a little bit mad. These are some of the PSA graded tens, and yeah, it's the whole aesthetic. And I am not going to sit here and say I'm a diehard soccer fan or anything like that. But I do appreciate watching football every now and then and things like that. And yeah, I just came across the Merlin set and got absolutely obsessed with the Renaissance cards. And then I was like, right, I need such and such, and I need such and such, and just absolutely fell in love with the aesthetic. But I've got to admit, it did then start to become a bit of a mini obsession. And at that point, I didn't know that much about the hobby. So I went and bought a lot of these cards when the set first got released, paid peak prices
Oh,
for these raw cards.
right.
Yeah, made all the mistakes you guys would tell me, what are you doing? Or why would you do this? You guys all know better than me. But I love the cards that much, it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And can we see some? Can you bring some of them
Yeah,
onto the bring them onto the camera? Yeah, because yeah, amazing
so
looking
that's the
cards.
latest Mbappe and
Yeah,
PSA 10. And then we've got the previous year. So I've got a nice pair there.
yeah,
There we go, that's another one.
yeah.
Again, the latest one.
They always make me think of like something medieval, and I don't really know why, but there's always like a medieval circusy vibe to them, and I don't
I've
really
got a
know what.
reel for that. Don't worry, James. I've got a real
Yeah,
medieval reel. Yeah.
yeah. It's just they just look really really good. And what was it? Just because you said you really like Merlin Chrome, and then was it that you wanted something to collect within Merlin Chrome, or was it that you saw the
Do you
Renaissance?
know
How
what?
did it work?
I came across the stained glass, and it was a stained glass bit for me. So you're probably getting already. I'm into my aesthetics,
Mm,
and I just looked at the card and was like, wow, that kind of stopped me, and took my attention, and I fell in love with the card. And then when I fell in love with the card, it was like, okay, let me see a little bit more of this, and some of your kind of fellow YouTubers did some fantastic pieces of content, and did some box breaks and things like that on YouTube. And when I started to see those, I was then kind of bought in and needed the set, and now I'm going to need it every single year that this comes out, no doubt, for the rest of my life. But yeah, I just got really hooked on that. But I think the cards, and we talked about the inserts, it's just quite a creative set overall, I think.
mm. And yeah, I think as well in terms we spoke a bit before about there's something about inserts that I really enjoy. Not so much really ultra modern. I'm not an ultra modern collector, probably, but some of
Sure.
the I spoke about with Damien and things about some inserts and things on his episode. But I really like inserts as a thing. There's something about them, like just maybe it's when they're a bit more short printed than the base set. I don't know. Maybe that's the collector rarity obsessed mentality in me just there. But I don't know. It's inserts. There's something I find really interesting about them.
Yeah, and it's the
Uh,
creativity as well, because coming into the hobby, I didn't have any kind of preconceived ideas about, what a card should or could look like. And, when I started looking into a few different sets, I was like, these are really creative. And I wouldn't necessarily put
yeah.
that with football. for example. So, another one that I love is Dondress. I know we talked about it, but the kind of the crunch cereal box designs, they're just kind of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah.
But they're so cool to have in your collection as well.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I love Donruss as well. I love the base cards. I love the velocities. I love the hollows that they do. But some of the inserts in 2018 are
Really cool.
amazing. Like the explosive is
Yeah.
one of my favorite inserts of probably any set. Actually, the explosive
And they're not
inserts.
even necessarily all the most expensive
No,
cards, but they're like a bit of a showstopper in your collection as well. And
yeah,
I love that accessibility piece as well. You know, high end
yeah.
is great. If you can afford that, that's absolutely incredible. But I like to see the inclusivity for, all aspects of the market. I think you get that as well with the inserts.
Exactly, and like say for instance the explosive ones, there's the Mbappe gold one. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great if you want it, if you've got it, but that's obviously really really expensive. But then actually there are other players like that. Actually, I love Mbappe, but players like Gareth Bale, Eden Hazard, Raheem
yeah,
Sterling,
yeah,
actually resonate with me more than Kylian Mbappe, if I'm being
yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah.
honest, as a like Premier League obsessive. And so I like collect. It's really nice when players like Hazard, Bale, and Sterling are included in those explosive insert sets because it gives me something
Yes,
to collect for them. Um,
definitely.
and yeah, I going back to the Renaissance. They are. I don't own any Renaissance, but I always think it's a really good looking insert set.
Yeah, they're
Um,
absolutely stunning. Love them.
yeah, and are they releasing them so they're every year now? Do you think that there will be, or what do you think will happen?
Yeah, I think is it about August time?
Hmm. And so there's been
So I
two
hope they
sets
are.
though.
That's going to be like the highlight of my, summer is getting my Merlin box.
Yeah, and do you buy many card boxes now at all, or is that something you do a
Yeah,
lot of? Or
I've got to admit, I do love getting into a bit of a rip. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I do it with my friends' children and things like that, and yeah, they have a great time as well. But sometimes, if you don't get the card you want or whatever,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm very happy to, buy those off of eBay wherever I can source those. So a bit
Yeah,
of both. And
and
vice versa as well, the ones that, I might only pick a couple of players and, I love nothing more than putting the ones that I'm not using, so with somebody else who appreciate that will enjoy that via my eBay as well.
yeah, no, exactly. And so a Merlin Chrome then is it just the Renaissance that you're going for? Or do you got some other
So
Merlin
it's,
Chrome
yeah,
cards
I
or
like the Mojo cards as well. They do a
yeah,
nice pink Mojo. I think I've got one over here. I think this is one of the earlier ones. Yeah, that's Merlin. The orange refractor, my Lionel Messi out of
yeah,
25.
yeah, nice, really
These are
nice.
beautiful cards. Yeah.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I like Merlin, and I think 2020 2021 Merlin is. I don't. There's Renaissance. There's not Renaissance in that, but it's such a good. They're actually really good. I really like the photography on the Merlin sets. I think the player images on the sort of base sets are really good, actually. Especially in a hobby now where we see so much product released. I do think
Absolutely.
Merlin actually is one of the better ultra modern, one of the best
Yeah, and they're
ultra modern.
super high quality cards as well, aren't they? Yeah, one of my
Yeah,
favourite.
yeah, good. It's a good item. And Renaissance. Have you completed the set then, the Renaissance set, or
No,
no?
I'm not going to go down that route. I've got the players that I like. I'm already having a bit of an emotional battle with the fact that some are tens and some are nines. So I'm on the fence about, getting rid of some of the nines and maybe just getting a 10, you know. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
going to try not to delve into that too deeply because they're not the cheapest cards.
no, exactly. Because I think that they're quite short printed, are they? The Renaissances, or are they
It's like
like
a
sort of?
case hit, isn't it? I
Is it?
think
Is
it's
it?
classed
So
as a
that's
case
yeah.
hit.
Wow, wow. And do they have parallels of Renaissance as well? Do they have like any
Yes, they
parallels? Yeah,
do. They do. But
yeah.
again, that's way out of my price range. Unless I stumble across one of those, I'm
Yeah,
not even
that's
going to delve into that, James. That's like, asking
no,
for trouble.
exactly. No, exactly. And you start, yeah. I think we all pick where we sit as well in terms of things. There are some things, and that can be
Yeah,
different as well for different things. Like there are some things within the hobby that I would go to like really, really extreme lengths within that
sure.
domain. But there's others where I'm fine with like so for instance, Chrome. I'm fine with like just a base Chrome card in a binder for a lot of it. I don't really need. I'd love,
And they do
a
some
red.
really nice
Yeah,
cards, don't they?
yeah, exactly. But then there's some stuff where I like some tickets and things where I want like full unused tickets graded and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just
yeah,
the way it is really. Uh, um, yeah, and then in terms of the hobby for me, even though I don't own too much Merlin, is a set which I'm very, very, very familiar with. But then the next item actually is a set I'd never heard of. This press pass authentic set. Should we have a chat about your
yeah,
next item? Is just
yeah,
because it's a very
absolutely. So
interesting one.
we've got Elvis Presley. This
Yeah.
one is from 2007. It's Press Pass. And yeah, I'm a bit of a Elvis Presley super fan. I'm not going to lie. I think he was super cool. So yeah, massive, massive fan of Elvis. But the bit about this card is obviously it's a numbered card. And it's a piece of Elvis-worn memorabilia. So it's a piece of an Elvis shirt. And I just thought that, because obviously, it's been a very long time since Elvis was around. So that just really struck me as a bit
Mm,
of an Elvis fan. It's something that is, quite rare. But also, I think I said to you, I opened 3 boxes of the press pass and did not get one memorabilia card. So they're, from my experience, super hard to come across. So this one, I actually had to source in the States. So yeah, I got stung with the old shipping fees getting this over from the States and got it graded with MGC. But yeah, it's just super cool to think, Elvis is something that was Elvis-worn.
yeah. And the patch, I'm just looking across because I've got the photos blown up as well so I can see. But the patch is it's a multicolored patch, is it
Yeah,
there?
so on the
Yeah,
back,
it's
you've got a picture of the actual shirt. So it was
oh
like
that's
a
actually really
spotted
cool.
shirt.
That's actually really,
Yeah.
really
And
cool.
then on the front, you can see it's a bit hard to see maybe there, but he's actually wearing that
Yeah,
shirt. That's the image of him in that actual shirt.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? And then yeah,
Yeah, and it's something as well, people that aren't necessarily into the hobby can connect with because everybody, can recognize Elvis. Everybody can recognize that it's got to be super rare to have a piece of, Elvis-worn memorabilia. So for me, it's a bit of a conversation starter when, my friends pop over and are looking into my collection and things like that. It's one that definitely unites us.
yeah, exactly. And this goes back to almost what we were saying about this is like one of those objective, like the Renaissance cool, like is cool for like us or collectors or things. But
Yeah,
actually, there's some items, like there are some items that I have which always people are like, wow,
yeah.
that's actually like amazing that item. Not in like a bragging way, but just that it's always that
Yeah,
there's
and it
some
doesn't have to
items.
be the value, it's
No,
it's just
exactly.
something that you connect with. And for me, that is one, I have no idea what this type of a card is worth. It's graded because I want to preserve it and because I care about the card. It's not
Yeah.
graded for the value. Um,
How so, Laura? As it wasn't like a. Did you go looking for like Elvis
yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff then, or what? How did you come
Yeah, so
about to
I
find it?
specifically went looking obviously at the different items, and there's quite a few sets over the years, but this one stood out because of the images on it. The fact that you can see Elvis in the shirt, the fact that it's serial numbered, it just made it feel a little bit more rare, a little bit more kind of sought after from my point of view. But
Yeah.
honestly, there's all sorts. I'm sure they had like a version that was a Elvis Presley swimming trunks, but I was like, that's not for me. That's taking it a little bit too far.
Yeah, for some people though, maybe nearher the crotch area
Somebody
might be a bit
bought
more
it,
expensive,
yeah.
maybe for those
Somebody
people.
definitely bought that card, but it was not me.
Yeah, and what why Elvis? I mean, it sounds silly because he's obviously so massive, but why are you such a fan of Elvis? How
Do
did
you know
that
what? I
start?
just think he's just an icon, isn't he? And I think, you look at what he achieved, and I think about this, with anybody from a music or even from a acting point of view, like sometimes it's hard to go to the shop, right?
Mm.
Can you imagine being on stage in Vegas every single
No.
night? Like what
Yeah.
he achieved is absolutely massive. And, to be that level of an icon, I just think is incredible. But it's definitely, yeah, I'd rather them than me, because you can see then at the back end of it, the impact, on him, his life. And I think that
Of
means
course.
something too, you know, because that
Yeah.
can't have
And
been easy. And it shows with the longevity of his life, unfortunately.
yeah, it's like Elvis, and there are some people that sort of transcend. I don't. There aren't many people as like as famous as Elvis or Marilyn Monroe. In terms of, I don't know. I've never thought about like the top 50 most famous people of all time. But if I did, I'd probably put both of those in them. Definitely, maybe even a bit higher. In terms of people known, it's just it's must
And
be
just so recognisable. You can hear an
yeah,
Elvis song. You don't need to be told that's an Elvis song. It's an Elvis song, right?
yeah, exactly. And did you watch the like Baz Luhrmann film with Austin Butler? Did you see that one?
Yeah, yeah, definitely watched that one. And
Did you
every
enjoy
now
it?
and
Was it?
do you know what? I thought it was okay. I thought it was okay. I didn't massively enjoy it. What I enjoy more is like the documentaries.
Mm,
You can watch Graceland on YouTube. So
yeah,
every now and then would watch they did quite a lot of events there. I think they did a Christmas show. And I think, obviously looking at what they've gone through as a family, Lisa Marie now, unfortunately, no more. But her daughter is taking over Graceland, and that's somewhere that I really want to go. And I think, she's making some, interesting, exciting changes, and I'm really excited to see, her touch on her legacy. And, the fact that she's keeping it alive for her granddad is super cool.
yeah. No, and actually, that's what a common thing that I have. Basically, what you said in terms of, um, I had it. I'll speak about the Elvis for a moment, but I had it with the Bob Marley film recently, and I had it with the Elvis film in the sense that I felt that like Baz Luhrmann is an all right director. He's fine, but it's. I felt with the Elvis film, I thought Austin Butler was very good. I thought he was brilliant, and I don't know if he was. You're an Elvis super fan, so I don't know if he did a good job, but he seemed to do a good job. Um, but I felt like the film. It was a bit of a missed opportunity because they could have gone like a bit deeper. I felt, but it was almost like it almost read like an advert for a film about Elvis with like
A bit
the sort of
superficial.
yeah, like 30-second like song numbers glitzy, and I just felt like it could have been they could have done more with it, and I thought that they could have
Mm,
gone a bit more. I get that was what they wanted to do, but for a biopic that was quite long, 2.5 hours, I came away from it thinking like not much happened, and
like a little
Elvis had
bit
a very
more.
interesting life, and I felt they could have gone
Yeah.
a bit darker in my ways. Just with some of
Mm,
the darker stuff, I thought would have been a bit
mm.
more interesting to go into.
I think on a
Um,
personal level, though, the way that Austin stretched himself to kind of,
yeah,
encompass that character, I guess that was the bit for me. I just thought, that's, to step into Elvis's shoes on such a, broad kind of landscape, that can't have been easy. Yeah,
no,
that
yeah,
can't have been easy. I think he did a good job.
yeah. His performance was amazing. Um, and he won the Oscar for it, did he? I think he did.
Do you know what?
Did he?
I didn't pay attention to the Oscars,
Yeah,
to
I
be
can't remember.
honest.
Yeah, but yeah, that, and also it reminded me a bit of Rami Malek when he did when he was Freddie Mercury.
Yeah,
Again, I
yeah.
had that issue. Although I am a big Queen fan, so I do feel a bit
Mm,
more able to comment. But I have similar. I think the problem is when when I know there's way more to these people, and it's actually quite
yeah.
difficult in a film that you're making for Hollywood for people to enjoy to be like to make something that is really deep in a film.
It's
I
a
don't know.
balance, isn't it, between the
Yeah,
kind of the real life and the depth, but also the commercialism, within that.
yeah. But I did like the Elvis film. I did like Bohemian Rhapsody. I didn't like the Bob Marley film though. I thought it was pretty rubbish
I've not
actually.
seen that yet,
Well,
so
I
I'm
just
probably not going to do that
I
now.
thought I thought it was quite poor actually. But this we're not being negative. We're being positive. I don't want to criticise Bob Marley. We're talking about the Bob
Yeah,
Marley
and hats
film.
off to Austin. Yeah, hats off
Yeah,
to him.
he did an amazing job, and it's a really, really like interesting card as well. To go back to the item, it's one of these sorts of cards that just it looks very interesting, doesn't it? And I love the fact that they've actually almost like photo matched it for you and put the image of him in the car, and it's on the
Yeah,
back
it's
as
super
well.
cool. But again, this is my version of that. These guys do all sorts of different, superstars, don't they? So again, it's relatable. It's something that I'm sure many people have got their own kind of relic card, that means just as much to them with somebody else potentially.
Yeah, it's a great card and a set I wasn't familiar with, but I will look into it, I think, and see if there is anything that resonates a bit more with me. Because you said you opened three. Is it quite a rare set in terms of the boxes, or what do
Do you
you
know
have?
what? Just for the memorabilia, the odds are really, really low. I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly
Yeah,
they were, but I know they were pretty low. But obviously, I opened three boxes, so I was pretty invested. But I've got to admit, again, going back to the whole movie thing, obviously, Elvis was in so many different movies,
hmm.
and they've got like different phases within the cards. And a
Yeah,
particular part of the card set is all about his movies. So it's all kind of iconic images of him on the cards from the different movie sets and things like that. So it makes them super cool. So I've got two sets of those actually. I like to
wow,
grade in twos to keep the best grade. So at some
yeah,
point, no
yeah,
doubt, they're going to be hitting NGC.
yeah. And then hitting the Instagram as well, and then that would
Oh,
be
yeah,
great
yeah, yeah.
to.
Can you imagine there's going to be endless Elvis reels?
Yeah. And yeah, is it and with your actually something which I didn't think I was going to
Mm.
ask about that's come up now in terms do you plan your social media posts then? Because they're so I keep going back. I sound like I'm a fanboy, but I am. It because they're so good. Do you like strategize in terms of this is what I'm going to post on this day, and is it how do you go
Do you know
about it?
what? I'm more driven by what I enjoy, what I love, the creativity. So I think
Yeah,
too much planning kind of, boxes off a bit of the creativity. I content plan in terms of what's relevant and what could potentially be trending. So I'm gutted this month because I had my Mike Tyson ready. I had my, who else, Conor McGregor bits ready because obviously there was going to be the big fights that are further, move back to later in the year. So I content plan in terms of what's coming up. So I've just had 30 cards back today. I've got some for the Olympics. I've got some for Wimbledon. So I go to that kind of planning in terms of what I'm getting graded, but not in terms of I look at the card and it's the card that really drives that. And
yeah,
I make these videos like I do a text message. I've got to that
yeah.
point with them, and it's just what it creates, what creativity comes as a result, direct result of that card.
No, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I guess it's similar to what I kind of post. I don't know. I post when I feel like it. Really.
Yeah, and
If
it's
like
got to be
it's just
fun, hasn't it, to be
yeah,
authentic? It's too manufactured. I'm not a corporate brand, as much as I try and, use a bit of that marketing experience there. It's Laura essentially that's doing this, and I'm in no way an expert.
yeah. No, exactly. I think as well. You've like utilized your experience in doing corporate things. That you've definitely developed transferable skills from it, but then you've been able to put your own like passion into it, and it sort of that's what you can see with pop culture
Yeah, and you know what?
encapsulated.
I think that's the beauty, isn't it? About, so many different things that people do. You can kind of bring in those expertise and, fuel your creativity no matter what you do. And everybody's got that different insight, and that's what
Yeah.
makes social media so creative and inspiring for people.
No. Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, amazing cards. And then, yeah, actually, the next item is I did actually know about the existence of this set. I'm not that familiar with it, but it's not the card we're talking about necessarily with the next item. It's actually the
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
So
don't
should
have
we?
it to hand. I don't have it
That's
to
all
hand, so
right.
I can't show you.
That's
But
all
I
right.
know
I'll
you've
bring it
got a
up.
picture, so I'm sure you'll work your magic, James.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Space Jam 1996, Michael Jordan. And yeah, I came across a number of packs and had some really great fun ripping, kind of getting the different cards and, kind of enjoying the set. But then, I just looked at the front image and it was quite an iconic nostalgia type image on the front of the pack. And
Yeah.
I think it was probably MGC that inspired me to grade the packs, because I had a little bit of rip fatigue, as you can imagine, with doing some of these packs. But the image was so iconic. The guys over there were doing a great deal, and I thought, you know what, I'd love to have that graded. So yeah, I popped a few in the post, and I was blown away to get a 10. Because
Yeah.
again,
Because
packs are fragile, right?
yeah, I've never graded a pack. I don't. Yeah, I like seeing it when people grade packs. I don't. It doesn't quite. I'm not like. I don't feel like an intense
Yeah.
urge to grade a pack. But to get a 10 is quite an achievement, I imagine,
Yeah,
on a pack.
honestly, for me, I'm blown away with whatever grade I get on a card that's 20, 30 years old, whatever. But to get a 10, I wasn't expecting it, so I was really, really pleased. And I'm trying to work my Michael Jordan collection, as close to tens as I can possibly get. I'm a little bit far away at the moment, so it helped me on that journey.
Yeah, and what was it? What was it about this sort of item that was it the getting the 10, or was it a why did you choose this for your Desert
So
Island
it's more,
slabs?
yeah, it's more the nostalgia for me. So if I'm an 80s kid, I think I was, teenager potentially when this film came out. So I had the connection more with the film than I necessarily did with the sport, if that makes sense. Because at that
Mm,
point, I was still in my Nintendo days and things like that. So I hadn't really necessarily understood the sport as much, but I had that connection with Michael Jordan from the film, because, that gave me that connection and, raised his profile. So it's a real nostalgia thing for me with that movie. And yeah, I just absolutely loved, you rip in these packs and some of the cards are a little bit different, but the image on the front of the pack was a nice one. I thought that was worth capturing.
yeah, it's a really nice image, isn't it? With the Looney Tunes. Space Jam's a great film as well. It's actually
Yeah.
like a really,
Yeah,
really
and again,
good
it's one
film.
everybody remembers that film as well. So, when I'm talking to my friends, when I'm talking to my family about, the Michael Jordan, they all recognise that one. They might not necessarily recognise all the wins. They might not recognise, some of the moments that are captured within some of the other cards, but it's one that they get. But also kids, kids get a bit of Looney Tunes as well. So, it's a relatable one to show kids.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, I mean, I loved because I don't think I'd ever heard of Michael Jordan when I saw this film in the
Yeah,
cinema. I was like, what? I
exactly.
was like 6 years
Yeah,
old. But then
yeah,
obviously I knew Bugs Bunny and I knew
exactly.
for the other characters. So I remember watching it, and I remember that scene so well. Of like I haven't seen it for a few years, but when his arms like stretching loads to like
Yeah,
do it, I
yeah.
just remember that so well. It's just it's a really interesting film as well about how they suck the ability out of them, and then they make these mutant things, and then he's just a great film.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
film. And it, like I say, it was one of my kind of first collections really with Michael Jordan. So, which has then developed on from there. So yeah, it's a nice one to have.
And when you identify a how do you because with someone like Michael Jordan, for instance, who I don't own any cards of Michael Jordan, but I could probably parallel it with my David Beckham collecting. How do you decide, because you can't collect
Mm,
everything of someone who's got so many things, how do you decide what you want to
yeah.
collect, and how do you research it?
And that, that it's never really my intent to have everything, right?
Hmm.
It's more my intent of, at the right time, what is it that elicits a feeling, what is it that I see, I like, looks relatively good condition, so it's more that for me. It's not, never the intent that I must have all of these. I
Yeah.
think it's absolutely incredible the effort that goes behind collectors that, put that level of effort into, obtaining that level of a collection. But that's definitely, I'm more of a kind of, a fun person, and I just enjoy it. I enjoy, if I come across a decent card, I'm probably going to get it.
Yeah. No, exactly. I'm not. I think I'm a completionist with stuff that, but I decide the extent, and then I'll know
Yeah,
when I've completed it.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
like someone that is obsessed with collecting everything. Apart from, well, I have started this Bobby Moore thing where I want to collect every single Bobby Moore card that's ever existed.
Right. Oh,
But that would
wow.
be like a
That's might take a
40 year.
bit of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like a 40-year properly project. I'm just going to just do it for
But that's
ages
the
and ages.
beauty of it, isn't it? You can
Yeah.
just take your time with it, enjoy it. You know, there were moments with the Michael Jordans where, you know, he played for North Carolina, so I wanted the North Carolina cards, and he played for the Wizards, so I wanted some Wizard cards. But yeah, for me, you know, it's not that deep. I enjoy, you know, what I find. You know, what I find is what I find, and it's what kind of fills me with joy at the time.
Yeah. And are you a basketball fan? Because obviously Kobe was your first item, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
you.
I like basketball. I've always liked basketball. When I was a kid, I had a basketball. I had the shirts. You know, I kind of got into that a little bit more. But you know, did the same with the football. I've still got one of my football shirts actually from when I was a kid. So yeah, got into all the World Cup collecting stickers. But yeah, it was basketball and football. But not necessarily die-hard fan. And we've got some incredible, you know, die-hard fans on the Instagram, don't we? So I'm
Yeah.
definitely not on their level, nowhere near.
Yeah. I'm probably a die-hard Man United fan, to be fair, although I hate myself for it, but never mind. But yeah, and actually the in terms of things that impact you, because you spoke about being 80s baby, and then you obviously remember Space Jam and things, and then probably the one of the most iconic figures of 80s and 90s people is the next person we're going to discuss, and the next item we're going to discuss.
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to rely on you, James, to show the guys a picture of it. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, and it's a Rolling Stone cover of Steve Jobs, and it's just such a iconic image. Again, this isn't about value. This isn't about, you know, what grade it is. This is about capturing an icon. And I think the way that they captured that image was just a, you know, a stunning shot of Steve
Mm,
Jobs. And, you know, from my perspective, you know, I've spent a little bit of time, you know, doing some weird and wonderful things in business. And, you know, he's a person that absolutely, you know, stands out. And I was right there on the Apple, you know, kind of craze, you know, getting, do you remember when we used to get the iPhones and it used to be, right, we've got to have the next iPhone as soon as it comes out? Luckily, I'm not on that kind of hedonistic treadmill of needing every single iPhone
yeah.
anymore. That's saving me a lot of money now. But back in the day, it was all about Apple.
Yeah, and you mentioned about doing some sort of weird and wonderful things within business. And is Steve Jobs used in the business? I'm probably imagine. I never thought about it, but is he used as a role model a
Absolutely,
lot? And how is?
I think he's iconic. You know, in terms of what he achieved. You know, it's a absolutely iconic brand, isn't it? At the end of the day, so you know,
Mm,
as somebody that spent a little bit of time in marketing, in product management, you know, what they achieve from a brand perspective is just. You know, I challenge, you know, many other brands to really
yeah,
stand up against that. So I think it is quite iconic from that point of view.
exactly. And to be honest with you, as I was saying to you, I read well, I listened to the audiobook of the Steve Jobs, the Jacobson biography, which was really, really insightful, because he's one of these people which I didn't know a huge amount about. I did read this last year, or listened to it last year, and he's a very, very, because I think he was quite an intense fellow.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and you know, I think that's the thing. In terms of the pursuit of greatness, I couldn't be as cutthroat as he was. In terms of, he was quite mean sometimes, actually, to
Mm.
people that he didn't. Um, you know, but I understand. I mean, to achieve what he did, you have to probably be like that to an extent. And there are some things with Steve Jobs as well that you can apply. I actually, when I'm speaking to more junior doctors and juniors, I speak about one of the things that Steve Jobs said, and I'm probably going to hash it, but I'll probably paraphrase one of the quotes. Is like, um, he said that, like, simplicity isn't the absence of complexity; it's conquering it. And actually, there's so much within, like, medicine and pediatric medicine where people try and, like, complicate it, and actually the most important thing is actually to try and you should be able to, it's like that explain like I'm five thing. It's just make it simple. Don't worry too much about, like, yeah, you need to know the science, you need to know the pathology, you need to know everything, but actually you need to know how to take a good history, a good examination, and be able to formulate a plan that you can then explain to the child, and the parents. And that's the simplicity of pediatric medicine. And I always think of Steve Jobs actually in that quote when I'm trying to
Yeah, I
explain
love
it. Like,
that.
we just get so bogged down sometimes in complexity and, like medical scientific jargon because it makes us feel good or intelligent or clever. But actually, it's actually like simplifying it down is
And I think,
actually doesn't mean,
yeah, and in life in general, any brand, it's like, do I recognize it?
yeah,
And do I remember it? Is it evoking any sort of a feeling for me?
yeah.
It's not that deep, is it? And even, you talked about my page, I just want people to recognize it. And, if I get that from my brand, I'm happy with that. It doesn't have to be like super complex.
No, exactly. And often, like, it's like he says, it's conquering it. It's not that, like, you can have you need to have an awareness of everything, but you don't need it. Sometimes the restraint is the thing. That you've
Yeah.
got all that knowledge, but the
Yeah. And we
restraint
want to
is
share it, don't we? It's almost like, look
exactly,
what I know, and,
exactly.
that isn't necessarily the most valuable part
Yeah.
is, constantly telling everybody everything you know.
And was this because obviously he passed away at a young age from
Yeah, I
pancreatic
think
cancer.
that's a bit as well. I've got friends and, quite close friends actually that have lost parents. I've lost a neighbour to pancreatic cancer. So,
Mm,
from my perspective, that really resonated, when people that have gone through such a awful, journey as well. I think that, really, makes it stand out a little bit more.
yeah, and the Rolling Stone episode, it was like like a tribute type um,
Yes.
article or magazine to him, was it? In terms of
Yeah.
it was after he passed away, and then that, and was that the image that you want? Because I imagine he must be on quite a lot of magazines. What was it about this one? You said it's an iconic image, but how did
Yeah,
you
I
find
just
it?
think again, aesthetics to me are really important, and particularly thinking about the fact I display these in my living room. I wanted something to be quite impactful. I just thought it was a beautiful image of him, and the way that the magazine had captured that. Again, not necessarily a all singing or dancing picture. It was just simple. It's just a black and white, beautiful image, and I just saw the beauty in that, and that made my eyes light up and made me want to, track that one down. It wasn't easy to find.
Was it not? Was it not an easy one to
No,
find?
no, it wasn't an easy one to find. And again, that makes it a little bit more important to me because I
Mm.
spent a little bit of time, and effort invested in finding that one as well. So it makes it all that more meaningful.
Yeah, and that surprises me because Rolling Stone, you'd imagine it had a like quite high print run, but maybe obviously people uh,
Yeah,
have wanted to hold on to that one. I don't
and
know why.
again, it's like, you don't necessarily recognize in the moment the importance of some of these things,
Mm,
you know. So, and again, some people don't think about that people buy magazines. I've got friends that have got all sorts of subscriptions to some, stunning magazines, and they just put them in the recycling bin.
yeah,
So, it takes an eye really to curate those. So, shout out to all the magazine sellers there. I know a few of you on the old Instagram, but yeah, I really appreciate what you do.
yeah, and you mentioned about your. So where is this? Is this on display somewhere? Is this in your living room at the moment? Where's this
Yeah,
one?
so I've got my lounges downstairs, and yeah, it's the back wall in my lounge, and it's like a display wall. So I've had it literally like the shelves put up specifically for my magazine. So
I,
I've got like three shelves. I've got four, magazines per shelf, and I just rotate on what I'm displaying there.
yeah, that's a really good idea with the rotation as well. And because I think you posted something the other day from like your living room or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like it's
that's
really
it.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it is so it looks so good, and it made me want to, when I'm sort of thinking in future in like forever home type thing. That's what I
yeah.
probably would want to do. Have like a at least one
Yeah,
room
and
where I
it's
just
it's
like
your own, it's unique, it's based on
yeah,
your interests, whenever anyone pops in, it's always a talking point, somebody finds a connection with something. So it's just nice to have that kind of, bringing the hobby into the home as well.
yeah, no, exactly because it's not and so much of what I've been trying to index things properly as well, so I can access them properly as well because I moved quite recently, so actually everything then goes into like cards and then like boxes and stuff like that. But then
Oh
they weren't
yes.
particularly well. They weren't particularly well sorted before. So then I've been like trying to restructure. How do I really want to organize my collection? And that's
Yeah.
part of it. So you can access it and then you can display it as well. And
Yeah, absolutely. And people do some great things with cards as well. This week I've seen some, beautiful card displays. There's a guy that I follow, and he's got some stickers from, I think it's like every World Cup or something like that, and he's got the packets all displayed. And there's just nice ways that you can,
yeah,
integrate the things you're passionate about into your home. And the magazines give us a really nice way to do that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. It's just it is an iconic image. It's quite a mesmerizing image of Steve Jobs as well. There, of him, and yeah, it's a very, very
Yeah, it's
interesting
one of my
image and
favourite.
great item. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And then we've got one more item, and this is a set that I actually know quite well. So it's nice to actually, because it's great to like actually, because the other guests I've loved, but I've always been quite familiar with everything that I've seen, apart from maybe the Faddy and the Star Wars toy. But everything else I'm sort of a bit more familiar with. But this episode, I've been thrown into a world that I haven't really seen or know too much about in terms of magazines. I said you've inspired me since I came to know you. But this set I do actually know reasonably well. So yeah, shall we have a chat about your final item that you
Yeah,
chose?
absolutely. So, yeah, over my time, I spent a lot of time in America, family over in the States. So I kind of got, into the whole kind of, Americana type approach. And this is 2011 Topps American Pie. Love him or hate him. We've got Kanye West with Taylor Swift there. I know he's not for everyone, but this is just, it's a really cool set. And this is just one of, a controversial moment in pop culture with this card here. Again, graded by MGC on that one. And it's, come out with a 9, which I think is pretty good because these are really dark cards. So they're not necessarily the easiest to
Hmm.
score high grades on. But as you say, this set is just so cool. There's so many moments, that you look at and, bring up nostalgia, be it from the Olympics all the way through to kind of the real world. When we first started getting into reality TV, there's some real weird and wonderful items in that set.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting set, and it's one that I don't see people speak about very often, because it's one of these sort of really quite eclectic sets, like you say. It's got lots of different components to it, and also I guess although I scan so much in America and things, I don't. It is a really quite American heavy set in some ways. So
It
maybe
is.
I don't
Yeah.
see stuff with it so much, but
Yeah.
it's got some really cool cards. This is obviously a very popular card within that set as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And the set goes all the way back to cards like representing the 19, I think it's 1920s it might go back to. I think
yeah,
it's like the whole century that it spans. So there's so many different, iconic movie stars and things like that. Old Hollywood, I'm a lover, as you can see, Marilyn Monroe, also
yeah,
love, no, unsurprisingly, old Hollywood. So there's some incredible cards there, that are just beautiful images.
yeah. And you said, because you've opened a few boxes of it as well. It's a hard box. I haven't seen
Yeah,
any boxes of it,
yeah.
but yeah,
So yeah, I managed to get my first box and it wasn't easy to find. Great seller over in the States hooked me up and got a massive import fee as well when that arrived. So yeah, that wasn't the cheapest box to get. So I think I really wanted this card because it's got Taylor and Kanye on it. And it's quite a controversial moment in pop culture, and I love a little
yeah,
bit of those moments as well in my collection. I think it was the first packet I opened. I got a Kanye. Now, as I'm ripping the set, right, like usually you tend to get a few duplicates. So I was hoping to get some duplicates. As I say, I like to grade in twos, but it was the only one. But not only that, there weren't any duplicates at all in the box that I opened. So there goes my strategy of grading in twos. That went completely out the window. And I didn't get some of the kind of key Steve Jobs cards. It also has Steve Jobs in there.
Yeah.
So many of the cool cards. So I ended up, kind of putting my pennies together and hitting up the guy over in the States who's a great seller over there, a guy called Vance. So shout out to Vance Cards. And managed, lucky enough, to get another box of those. Got no Kanye at all in that box. So some people will probably be pleased by that. There definitely
Yeah.
was no Kanye in that set.
Yeah. It's a very interesting set. You mentioned because there's the base cards, and then there's the foils as well, and then there's also the spotlights out of 76, which look really good actually. It's your episode, so I don't like showing my own stuff in your episode, but just for the viewers, like, this is Michael Phelps's card, and it's a spotlight out of 76, and for me, like, these, if you see, they don't appear very frequently at all, and it's that they, like, I mean, I like Michael Phelps because he's obviously probably one of the greatest Olympians of all time, but it's such a good looking card. It just looks so good, and they capture the moment really well, because I think, even though that's a sports card, I think the pop culture element of that set makes them frame it in a different way beyond the sporting element and more like the cultural significance of it, which I think is really
Absolutely.
appealing.
And just to put this into perspective, you've got the Phelps card there. I ended up getting a TV dinner card. So I'm not going to lie. Like, people are like, what foils did you get? What kind of special cards did you get? And I was so gutted that I got a TV dinner card.
Yeah, that's probably not the one that you
No,
necessarily
but I've
want.
got Steve Jobs. I've got the Steve Jobs cards. They've got Twitter. They've got YouTube. So they've got some real cool moments. The ones
Yeah.
that I really wanted, there's still one that I don't have. So if anybody's got it out there, let me know. I want the Beanie Baby card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I need the Beanie Baby. I need the Pog card as well. So hit me up if anybody's got those. I've got
Yeah.
the original 9 Beanie Babies. I've kept those, so they're in my collection as well.
Yeah, the Beanie Baby card I don't have. It's I haven't looked for it too much, but it's one that I was interested
Yeah,
by, because I find, yeah, collectibles Beanie Babies very interesting. Well, I didn't think we spoke about Beanie Babies, but
I know.
very
It's a bit of a guilty
interesting.
pleasure there, but I feel like I need the card now to go
Yeah,
with
no,
my original 9.
it's amazing, and actually, for anyone like watching this, or anyone watching this, I don't know if you've read a book called The Great Beanie Baby Bubble,
No.
um, it's a fantastic insight into I loved Beanie Babies when I was actually, my dad, he had a colleague who could get access to them, so he used to bring me and my sister back a Beanie Baby, like, all the time.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I remember that. I
Beanie
remember
Baby
that.
dreams.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember that mousse chocolate with the orange antlers was like my first
Yeah,
one. He was
yeah.
always my favorite
I've got
one.
that one.
Yeah, great. But the Great Beanie Baby, but then obviously beyond the collecting, it went into this mania with Beanie Babies,
Yeah,
of the
crazy.
investors and speculators. And that book is one of the best books I've read explaining, like, sort of economic bubbles.
Yeah.
It's
And there's
incredible, that
so
book.
many different, like, so you think, oh, this is a really rare Beanie Baby, but there's so many, like, variations within these. It's a bit of a minefield as well. So I think, it's a bit of an anticlimax for people if they, think that they've got a really valuable collection there. Mine is definitely
Yeah.
not.
No, and that's the thing. I think the thing is, when you, and this goes back to actually what we were talking about earlier, before we came, is, I think when you love something, it doesn't matter. But the problem is, or the problems come, or the people get their fingers burnt when they come into something with another
Yeah.
intention in mind, and that's what happened with Beanie Babies. And I think the issue with
Mm,
Beanie Babies, to an extent, is that I think that a lot of their marketing was based upon, they are investable, which I think was a bit off. And
yes.
that guy
Yeah, yeah.
Ty Warner is a very interesting, bonkers guy. The guy that invented Beanie Babies, bit of a madcap chap, but yeah, it's just a interesting book. I'd recommend it to anyone, definitely. And yeah, Yeah, I hope you get what is the Beanie Baby card? What as in I can't remember.
It's
Who
just
is it like a bear?
it's just
Is it
got the
like
Beanie Babies. It's got like I'm sure it's got like the original Beanie Babies on. So I had my
yeah,
eye on that one. The other one that I really wanted was the iPod one, and I wanted the
yeah,
Nintendo one as well. And luckily, in the second box, I thought I might need to get a third box here if we don't get at least the Nintendo one. But I was lucky enough to get the Nintendo one, so that's on the
yeah.
page.
No, that's yeah. It's a great set, and they've got it's got sort of like memorabilia cards. It's got some really interesting like memorabilia
And some
cards in and
wacky
things.
moments as well, some
Yeah,
complete like off the wall moments. But when you look at it, you're like, ah, yeah, I remember that.
yeah. And it's I the reason I like that set as well is because I think a lot of effort was put into it as well. It's like there's so much effort that's gone into that set to curate that set. They've really thought about what they want to include, and then they've got the
Yeah,
associated
they've
memorabilia.
had a great team behind that for sure.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's even like, like the kind of like bits of text on the back and stuff. They're just really fun to read. And my mum's in her 70s, and there was a few cards that I knew she would remember. And she got into it as well. She's like, "Oh my God, I remember that." So I think it's a set that you can just have a real, bit of fun with.
Yeah.
But what I would love to see is a UK equivalent to that,
Oh
because some of the
yeah.
moments are very so American that they go straight over the head. So it'd be just incredible to have a UK version.
Yeah. That would be actually like you have like don't know like I don't know why Coronation Street came to my mind. I'm not even a big Coronation Street fan, but like Corrie, or like X
Some
Factor type
scandals,
stuff,
yeah.
and like scandals and
Posh and Becks.
Hoshdenbeck's like Princess Diana. You
Yes,
could
yeah,
do
yeah.
a lot with that. You could do a lot with that.
Tops, if
You,
you're listening, we need you.
yeah, just make your own. Yeah, it would just be great. Really, it would be a really really good set.
Yeah, and it's that whole nostalgia thing, isn't it? It's so enjoyable when you've got that connection, with your kind of formative years and stuff like that. It's just so fun to delve into those moments.
Yeah, no, exactly, and yeah, it's yeah, it's a box which yeah, I because I was astounded. I mean, we don't like talking about prices on the channel, but it's like I was astounded by how expensive it because it makes sense because I
Yeah.
don't see it, so then it makes
Hmm.
sense that it's so expensive, but it is obviously quite an expensive box as well, and they don't
Yeah.
appear
And
too
hard to
frequently.
find. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I was really, really lucky and appreciative that Bounce Cards got me a second box there.
Yeah. And you also said as well, in terms of it's also putting a bit of it's inspiring you to do some because it's so much of what I love to do as well, and I've said is about pairing tickets and cards. But now you're then
Yeah.
looking to do some of the magazine combos
Yeah,
as
so
well.
I've
Is that right?
started doing that already. Yeah, yeah. So I've done it with Messi. So I've got the pink, Into Miami Messi with the,
Yeah.
PSA magazine, and I've got Steve Jobs cards to go with the Steve Jobs, and I've done Marilyn Monroe, and you can get like there's Marilyn Monroe sets that are by the movie as well. You can get magazines that are by the movie, so they reflect each other, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So
No.
there's some
Yeah.
really cool ones.
Yeah. And then is that the direction? Because in terms of as collectors, we're always evolving. But what sort of direction do you see you going in with your collecting thing? Is that
Think
what you want to go
it's
into? What
all
do you think?
the foundation of it is always going to be that love for the magazine aspect, and I think now I've learned quite a lot, so I'm aiming for those super high grades in the modern, and then just finding really nice vintage magazines that are representative of pop culture really. So that's pretty much going to stay the same for me. But if I see a
Yeah.
card that fits, then I'm always going to have that love of cards and, being a collector and ripping packs and boxes and things like that as well. So, yeah, a little bit of everything, I think, but collector, at the foundation.
No, exactly. Yeah, and I think that concludes our run through of the items really, and an amazing array of items. Yeah, and just any further words or anything, any unifying
Just a
marketing or?
massive thank you for, reaching out. Have never done a podcast before, so, it's an absolute privilege to be on your YouTube, James. So I really appreciate that and what you do. And yeah, if anybody sees this and, wants any advice from a magazine perspective, or see something they like, hit me up. Yeah,
Thank you so much for Laura to coming on Desert Island Slabs. She's been an amazing guest. And yeah, just thank you so much. And please follow her account, Pop Culture Encapsulated. She has an amazing collection and she's very, very active and putting things out very, very regularly as well. And thank you all to watching this episode of Desert Island Slabs. If you're a collector and you would like to come on Desert Island Slabs, then please message me on the My Sports Compendium Instagram or the Desert Island Slabs Instagram. But for now, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Laura. Bye bye.